Right, our first manipulation that we're going to do now is the folded knife pleat forward and back of DCL. As you have learned, we often make a plan and then we work from the plan to make the actual pattern pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to indicate that it's a plan. We are going to trace around our block as we have done previously, marking the end of our dart, down center front, along our hem and matching it up. Don't forget to draw your dart in, okay, and mark where your center front is. Right, working with our scale ruler, remember we are working in half scale, so we will again wanting to work with our ruler that says 1 to 2 on it. Marking from center front, I want you to do a line that is 5.5 centimeters parallel to center front. This is going to be where your first pleat is positioned. This line is to be parallel to center front. So this is 5.5 centimeters. Then from that line, I want you to measure 7.5 centimeters. Okay. By now you should be very comfortable with your scale ruler, especially working in half scale. So from that line to that line, we have 7.5 centimeters. Okay, we have a situation now with our dart. What we need to do is we need to evenly divide our dart on either side of our new panel lines that we have developed. What you would do is you would measure the top of your dart, which is 2 centimeters. So therefore we need to have a dart that's 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters. So measuring 5 millimeters on either side of your panel lines. And you know your dart is 8 centimeters long because that's how you constructed it. If you're not sure, you can measure your dart length again. But it's 8 centimeters down on each line. And I want you to redraw in these new darts. Okay, this dart now becomes null and void, okay, because you have placed it on either side of those panel lines. Right, I now want you to cut out your plan or trace it off if you wish to keep another one, and we are going to use this to make our actual pattern piece. Okay, as you can see, I've cut out my plan. What I have done is I've put my hip line in. Remember, your hip line is squared from your center front. Don't just draw a line because what we're about to do will not work. Whenever we open our patterns, we always work on a horizontal line. This is called a horizontal hip line, and it must be squared. Must be squared from center front. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is on the piece of paper I'm working on, I'm going to draw a horizontal hip line that I'm going to use to match my pattern on. We do this to ensure that we don't go off grain and we wind up with a skirt that is skew. Okay, we are going to be working, our folded knife pleat is going to be a 4 centimeter deep pleat. This should all mean everything to you after module 1. Okay, what we're going to do is working here at center front, you can see with my horizontal line, you can see I'm matching my hip line, both sides to my horizontal line. Can you see that? And I now need to mark off what is fundamentally panel 1. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to mark the top of my dart, the new dart that I've done. Can you see? Okay. I'm going to do a little straight line there where my waist is. I'm going to do a straight line where my waist meets my center front, a little straight line down my center front. I know my center front, if we keep going down, is a straight line, so I don't need to mark it all the way. I'm just going to mark at the hem again. You can see I've done a little line there and a little line along the hem, and I'm going to do a line that indicates where my first panel line is, also indicating the hem slightly. Using my tracing wheel, I am going to indicate where the end of my dart is by making a cross. Okay, I will then take this off and I will take my block, because remember, we used our block to make the plan, so everything should work. I'm going to match up my center front to my center front, okay? And I am going to make sure that my waist is on my waist. I'm going to draw down my center front, and I'm going to mark along my hem of my block to the point that I did. I am then using my ruler, I'm going to draw in with a broken line, because this isn't an actual separate pattern piece. We are rather opening the pattern with a broken line, and I'm going to draw my dart in. Okay, remember that if you were to extend this line, it should go right through the center of your dart. Okay, so this, I have put this line onto my pattern here. So now we have been told it's a 4 centimeter deep pleat. Using the half scale side of our ruler, we are going to measure. Remember, just a little bit of a refresher, this is my center front. Looking at a bird's eye view, I'm going to come out to, this is my first panel line. I need to go in 4 centimeters and out 4 centimeters before I can continue. Do you remember that about your pleats? So we are going to measure 4 centimeters from our line, making sure it is parallel. And we are again going to connect it with a broken line indicating our 4 centimeter mark. Please make sure your line is straight. If your ruler is not long enough, do not add on the end. Overlap your ruler a good 50% of your ruler so that you can ensure that your line remains straight and parallel. Now we need another 4 centimeters to come out. So from our 4 centimeter line, we are going to measure another 4 centimeters and make another broken line, because once again, remember, we are not cutting this pattern piece up. We are merely opening it to allow fabric in for the pleat. Okay? So I've got 4 centimeters there as well. That is my pleat going under and coming back out again. Placing my block back on, I'm now working on this line, which is my second line. I'm going to place the hip line again on my hip line. I'm going to mark the top of my center of my dart to the new second 4 centimeter line, and I'm going to make sure it matches at the hem. If your hip line is not squared to your center front, these 4 points will not match. Okay, so if you're struggling to get all 4 points to match, go back and check that your hip line is squared, because if it is not squared, this will not work. Once you have done that, you are going to make a line indicating the left-hand side of that dart along your waist, the right-hand side of your dart and along the waist. Okay, and again at your hip, at your hem, beg your pardon, not your hip, your hem, you will mark the line and where your hem is. You will indicate the bottom of your dart on both panels, not just one. Okay, you will remove your plan using your block again. Okay, you will mark in your waist. Okay, you could have quite easily have also used your tracing wheel. If you, at least you could have marked the whole thing with your tracing wheel. There is my mark for the bottom of my dart. You will draw in the bottom of that dart, draw in the right hand side, and again, please connect your panel line with a broken line. Remembering, we are not breaking up this pattern. It is not a panel. It is rather an opening. Okay, now we come to our second pleat, which is that line there. Once we now need to open that 8 centimeters to accommodate for a knife pleat. So again, using our half scale ruler, we are going to measure 4 centimeters. And we are going to draw another broken line. Oh, sorry, that's not a broken line, it should be. Not to worry, just quickly take my ruler, my rubber, beg your pardon, and just rub some out. I then need another 4 centimeters. Remember, we have done the first 4 centimeters. We need to do our second 4 centimeters. Again with a broken line. Okay, extending all the way to the top. And like before, we are going to now place our block on again, matching our horizontal hip line with the center line of our second 4 centimeter piece. Again, by now, if your hip line is not squared, you are really going to be struggling to match all 4 points. Okay? All right, you're going to mark the left-hand side of your dart along your waist. Mark your waist where it meets your side seam. You know where that is. Mark your hip. Mark where your side seam meets your hem. And along your pattern where your hem meets your panel line. Again, you will bring your block, because you know your block is what you made this originally from. You will line up your points and you will trace your skirt. Okay, you will draw in the bottom of your dart. Okay, that is your dart from the other side. You would connect, sorry, that wasn't, you will connect your hem. You can use your ruler, it's a straight line. You can connect your waist as it is a straight line. Your nips, okay, you would add seam allowance around this pattern piece, marking that that is your center front. Okay, you would add a 1 centimeter seam allowance. If you are unsure of your seam allowances, please go back to the notes we did in module 1 where we put seam allowance on your block. Okay, because you would continue. The seam allowance is the same for every pattern piece. If you cannot put seam allowance on a pattern, you must understand you cannot sew it together because you have made no allowance for the machinist to sew the garment together. When it comes to corners, as we showed you before, you do lots and lots of lines and you keep going straight. And then your seam allowance going down. You intersect it. You will continue that down. What I want to show you, please make sure that remains a point. Do not let your seam allowance round like that because you will not know where to stop sewing and where to start sewing your side seam. Okay? Because this is a straight hem, you would be giving it a deeper hem allowance, approximately 3 to 4 centimeters. So again, as the pattern cutter, you would decide, but knowing that it is a straight-ish hem, you could go for a deeper hem allowance. Okay, you would continue your hem allowance around along with your seam allowance up there. Your nips would work as following. You will nip on your dart line. Can you see your dart line? Not your panel line, okay? If you only nip on your panel line, your waist will be too big. And you do half a nip, okay? That is a full nip, okay? If you have a look, that is a full nip. Half a nip is what you put on center front and it only goes one way, okay? Or center back. If a fold line, that is a fold line nip, okay? You will nip your seam allowance up here and down, obviously, you would nip your hip allowance. There's always a hip nip, okay? If you were wanting these pleats just to be folded and not pressed in, you would leave your pattern like this. If you are wanting the pleats pressed in, you would nip your hems on each of the panel lines as well, indicating that that is where your pleat is pressed in. Okay, so just to double check, to show you the drawing here of what this looks like, you would more than likely want to put your drawing with your worksheet when you do your 5th scale, simply because it makes life much easier. Okay, you are welcome to use your croquis figure if you feel you're going to do a neater drawing for your portfolio of evidence and your file. But you can see there is my center front, there is my DCL. So this pleat is forward and behind DCL. Well done. You would cut this out, cut it on the fold, and that would be your pattern piece.